possible we may never find this wreckage, may never find this.
If you'd asked me that a week ago, I would have said no. We would find some debris. We would eventually trace the debris back to the wreckage field. I think as time goes on, Bob, with an area this large to search, I think it is possible, as hard as it is to believe, that we may never find the plane. And if we don't find the plane, and we don't find some kind of conclusive analytics evidence on the police side, I think there is a chance we might not know.
All right. Well, I want to thank all of you this morning. Thank you, Captain Sullenberger. And we're going to go now to Indianapolis, where the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Mike Rogers, is standing by. Mr. Chairman, have you been briefed? What about U.S. intelligence agencies? Are they playing any part in this, or have they been brought into it in any way?
Sure, you might expect that we want to find out exactly if there was some terrorist nexus or some other nexus that would raise concerns to our national security. And I can tell you, just in the discussion you had with your panel, we're creating a big matrix from the plausible to the probable, and nothing has gotten to the probable quite yet, meaning there's still investigation to be had. You're going to have to do a thorough investigation on everyone on the airplane now to make some determination. And the very fact that it may have gone over Malaysia, and I don't think that that's really conclusive, tells you, now you have a whole new wing of this investigation that has to open that will take an intense amount of time, and it may lead to the biggest dead end yet. This plane still may be at the bottom of the Indian Ocean, and I think a lot of folks that I talk to believe that's probably the most likely, the most probable circumstances, that in fact it is at the bottom of the Indian Ocean. But you cannot quite yet rule out everything else because we don't have the physical evidence we need to come to that conclusion.
You are an old FBI agent before you were a member of Congress and the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. Is there any doubt in your mind at this point that this was a criminal act?
You know, from everything I see, it's all built on speculation. And by the way, Bob, that phrase "old FBI agent" concerned me a little bit.
Well, I'm an old Face the Nation moderator, so yeah, exactly. An older one than you are.
Yeah. When you add up the plausible fact points, it certainly would lead an old investigator to say there is a lot more to that portion of the story, which is why they seized the flight simulator. Not that it was unusual necessarily that the pilot had a flight simulator, but they want to go through and find out, were you playing some scenarios on that particular flight simulator that might match up to some alternate activity on your flight path? All of that will be done through a really intense forensic investigation to try to determine was there pre-planning. Think about it. If you're going to fly over countries that we know have radar, and you're going to try to do it in a way that either saves the aircraft or crashes the aircraft, there is a lot of planning that has to happen. And if there was more than one involved, there is that conspiracy trail means that people had to talk to each other. All of those are potential gaps for our FBI agents and others who are involved in this investigation, the Malaysian intelligence and police services, to fill in those holes. Well, it's all small, and it's going to take time.
But the fact that he had his own flight simulator, as it were, in his house, it does open up new possibilities, as you suggest. I mean, what exactly was that all about? Let me shift to Ukraine. You heard earlier this late-breaking news that the Russian Foreign Ministry says that Secretary of State Kerry and the Russian Foreign Minister have agreed to settle this thing through constitutional reform of some sort in Ukraine. What did you make of that?
Well, I mean, we've seen this movie before, and we should be cautious. I want to know exactly what was offered in exchange. Right now, Russia is feeling a unique set of pressures other than the international community. It's their economy is starting to suffer. You know, Russia is so dependent on energy as the propping up their economy. Any disruption in that cash flow has serious and real consequences. So if this was just to buy Russians time, I'm concerned about it. If this was truly an effort to allow the referendum to happen, which is what I think the Russians are doing, so that they have the strength in any negotiation with Ukraine, the government of Ukraine, you know, that's a whole different story. The United States needs to take a pretty strong stand in relationship with our EU partners. Now would be the time to try to ramp some of that up as we get to those discussions. If we don't, it's the relief, the pressure on the pressure that the Russians need to continue to do and solidify their hold on the Crimean Peninsula.
Yesterday, as you're well aware, the Russians seized an area in Ukraine that is home to a natural gas distribution center. This is the first intrusion into an area outside Crimea. How big a concern is that to you?
Well, if you look at the logical, strategical areas that they need to hold, from airports to communication centers to the parliament to the military bases, this is that next logical step to make sure that they cannot interfere with the successful delivery of energy to the Crimean Peninsula. I think that this was in preparation of the vote, meaning that they believe that this vote is going to come out that where the Russians believe that they're going to, the Russian population in the Crimea is going to vote to go with Russia. Well, in order to protect the outcome of that vote, I think they needed this strategic hold. This is where natural gas can be delivered in that region, and I think the Russians believe that was very, very important to make sure that that wasn't a lever that the Kiev government could use against the Crimean Peninsula. So I think that's what you're seeing here. I find it interesting that that happens. You have some low-level cyber attacks happening, which we've seen the Russians use in the past, and then this notion that, well, we'll have a discussion about constitutional reform in Kiev about the Crimean Peninsula. That sounds like a series of actions that's deliberate and not coincidental.
You said a couple of weeks ago that Russian President Putin was playing chess and we're playing marbles. Do you think he's won this round?
Well, I mean, clearly he has set the table to his advantage in any negotiation going forward. Clearly that's happened. And the fact that we've had a little bit of fraying in our European relationships diplomatically has caused us some real difficulties. And so, you know, if you're asking me, do I think he had the advantage going into this? Yes, I do. Which worries me about what was offered up in that phone call. What kind of concessions did the United States offer? Did we have a relationship with the EU that would allow us to make those concessions? And what are the next few steps? We're going to have to learn that in the next few days. But if you look at how this has played out, clearly Putin has had the upper hand in this. Even though he risks huge economic problems, his popularity domestically has soared. And he doesn't have a lot of great economic issues going on at home. So without this, his popularity is lower. All of those dynamics in Putin's mind mean that he's ahead as he would walk into any negotiation with Kiev, and we're playing catch-up.
All right. Well, many thanks to you, Mr. Chairman. We're going to talk to